Welcome to the Prophecy Club. Today we are going to be talking about EMP Pulse and how it can basically destroy our whole world. In a millisecond, it would all be gone. Okay, first of all, a refresher. Because these days, since I think that this has already been fulfilled, I will probably start every broadcast with this one paragraph. Now, I need also say that I'm still looking for more confirmations of the 6 p.m. 6/6/2020 assault or the coup d'etat upon the White House and Donald Trump. So if you can get me more confirmation other than just what Benjamin Fulford has said, then I would be much appreciative to that. But anyway, Dimitru was told the fall of America will start with an internal revolution in America started by the communists. Some of the people will start fighting against the government. The government will be busy with internal problems. All right, hang on. My opinion, that's already happened and in progress on some of it. Then from the oceans, Russia, Cuba, Nicaragua, Central America, Mexico, and 2 other countries will attack, and Russia will attack and defeat America in one day. Now, the question is, how? Okay, so let's go to Henry Gruver. Of our 160 speakers over the 27 years, I believe he is my favorite. I just love this guy, but he's gone on to be with the Lord. Henry Gruver would go out and walk and pray over cities. I mean, he literally would get a map and walk up and down every street in the city, praying loud, praying in the Spirit, pulling down strongholds, loosing the angels to do warfare. Then he would go up on a high spot over the city, raise his hands, and reclaim the city for God. Many amazing stories. Many cities turned to Jesus after his prayer. That was part of what he did. December 14th, 1986, he had been out walking and praying. He said, I went on top of the Eagle Tower of the Carnarvon Castle. It had 8 points on it, each of the points were eroded eagles. This castle was built in the 12th century. I was overlooking the Irish Sea towards the North Sea, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, tip of Scotland, Greenland, Iceland, in that area. All of a sudden, I was lifted above the earth, and I was looking down on the earth like a globe. As I looked down on the earth, I saw all of these massive amounts of all kinds of ships and airplanes. By the way, does that do away with flat earth? They were coming up out of Norway, out of this inlet, and they headed down between the United States and Europe. They literally covered the whole Atlantic. Then I wanted to see what was happening to the United States. I looked over on the globe at the United States, and I saw coming out of the United States these radio communication towers. I saw the jagged lines like they draw to show that the communications are coming out. All of a sudden, as I was looking down on them, they began to sprinkle down on the earth like dust. And I thought, oh no, they're not getting through, they don't know what is happening, they're totally oblivious. Then I began to see submarines emerging from under the surface. I was surprised at how close they were to our borders. They were in our territorial waters, some even on the beaches. Then I saw missiles come out of them. They hit eastern and western coastal cities of the United States. I cried out and I said, oh God, when will this be, and what will be the sign of its coming? An audible voice spake from behind me and said, when Russia opens her doors and lets the masses go, the free world will occupy themselves with transporting, housing, feeding, and caring for the masses, and will let down their weapons and cry peace and safety. Then sudden destruction will come. That is when it will come. Does that sound like Dimitru's prophecy being fulfilled? Does to me. Now let's go to Hal Turner, June 19, 2020, and I've actually got this sent to me from several various people out there that listen. By the way, my email is askstan@prophecyclub.com if you'd like to send me an email. But anyway, the headline is Report. China to use EMP first strike against USA, disabling all electronics. Now, you and I know that China is not going to attack America. Instead, China is going to be going against Russia after the attack. But nevertheless, the point is still the same. The People's Republic of China has undertaken intense development and now deployment of electromagnetic pulse weapons to use against the continental United States to destroy all electronics prior to commencing an actual land invasion. These EMP weapons can be detonated high in the atmosphere, not even visible to most Americans, who will suddenly find themselves thrust into the equivalent of the Stone Age. No electricity, no working devices, all of which have been fried by the EMP. Not repairable, only by replacing every chip. The U.S. government defense threat assessment is terrifying. It outlines the very specific steps China is taking right now to prepare for a, quote, Pearl Harbor type sneak attack using electromagnetic pulse EMP weapons. These weapons can be defended against, but such defense must be done at a level of each home and each vehicle. Imagine for a second, your electricity goes off. It happens from time to time, but this time, all the electronics start arcing and sparking. And let me pause for a second. I remember talking with, I believe it was Lindsey Williams, and he said his parents talked about a time when there was a massive sunspot. And he said that you could see like squirrels run down the wires. He said you could see sparks and electronic waves, fire dancing down the telegraph cables. Now, of course, in those days, that's all they had. But they remember talking about this, and it hit the whole earth, apparently, a large portion of it anyway. But this time, electronics start arcing and sparking, light bulbs explode, smoke comes out of every electronic device, some devices catch fire. As an EMP bomb is detonated 100, 300 miles above the United States, the intense blast reacts with the ionosphere, the electronic charged particles high above the planet. This has the effect of generating magnetic fields. Magnetic fields are what power plants to use and generate electricity. But in this case, the magnetic fields are not inside a power plant generator, but rather inside your car or your house. Every time these fields come in contact with metal, they induce voltage. They can cause the free flow of electrons in metal. So, every power line in the country, including wires inside walls, generate electricity. 10 to 25,000 volts of electricity. So, what would your electronic devices do if they suddenly got a 10,000 to 25,000 volt surge? Yeah, that's right. All the electronic circuits, especially the little tiny ones, the chips, those would literally melt. Seconds later, try to imagine your house or your car filling with smoke from the melted chips or electronics. You are now in the horse and buggy age. Why? Because it knocks out most, but not all, military response retaliation, but especially the civilian chips, are dead, not to come back to life. No cell phones, computers, televisions, radios, cars, trucks, buses, but the biggest problem is no electricity, any place, and it's not coming back in our lifetime. An EMP device, for example, hitting Chicago, everything 1,000 miles in all directions, fried. You can protect yourself from this, so he says, with an EMP shield, and we don't offer it, but there are places on the internet that offer them. Probably a good idea. This is accomplished by shunting or shorting the overvoltage coming in from the grid and the voltage surges that are collected in your home. I understand they also have them for vehicles, but let's go on to the next point. Now, this comes from Maurice Scalart. Title, Tribulation Dream, the Angel of the Lord over the Statue of Liberty. It confirms many things from many of the other prophets, but it specifically talks about EMP pulse. So I'll go right to that, then I'll back up and we'll start it over from the beginning. Then I saw 3 giant rocket missiles that took off into the air. 2 came out of the ocean waters, 1 came from the land, traveled a great distance, but all of them blew up in the air, 1, 2, and 3, in the upper atmosphere within 5 minutes of each other. It was out near space. They were terrible nuclear bombs, but the last one was the biggest one, and it created a huge mushroom cloud up in the atmosphere over the Midwest of America. Then the ground shook, and everything just went black. There wasn't any electric light coming from any of the homes. Then candles began to get lit, and fires, and a little light was seen. There were other nuclear explosions, and many people perished throughout the nation. There was just twisted metal and charred debris in cities that once were tall and majestic. Now, let's jump back to the first of it. It was March 15th, 2014. Maurice Sklar, now, as Henry Gruver, I've known Henry Gruver. He stayed in my home many times, both the home in Topeka and now also our home in the DFW area. And so I knew Henry. Same thing with Maurice Sklar and his wife, Devorah. I know them. And these are great men and women of God. This week I had a dream, he says. It was a terribly frightening dream. In it, I saw a huge angel standing, suspended in the air over New York Harbor. It looked so large that it covered the night sky. His body was clad in golden armor as if it was going to war. His face and entire being were so bright that I could not gaze up at him for long. White beams of light seemed to radiate outward from him in all directions. He was standing over the Statue of Liberty. It was night, but I could hardly see the lights around him coming from New York City because he blazed so brightly with divine light. He reached for his belt that was covered with a red sash around his midsection and drew out his sword. It was so massive, it blazed with light and fire all around it. It looked at least 100 foot long. I have never felt such fear when I saw an angel before. I just knew this mighty warring spirit had authority from the very throne of God. He had a grim expression as he held his mighty sword over his head with both hands. I could see that he was poised to hit the Statue of Liberty and cleave it in two. I trembled. I tried to hide, but the angel was looking directly at me, and I knew there was nowhere to go that he would not see me. Then he spoke. His voice was like thunder and echoed throughout the whole harbor. He said, "How long will you refuse to humble yourself, O America? You have been weighed in the balances of God and found wanting. Your beginning was great and noble, but your end shall be in disgrace and destruction. Thus saith the Lord of heavenly armies, the Lord of hosts. Time is running out. The bowels of my wrath are full of my fury and judgment. They shall be poured out upon you. You shall drink them down to the dregs, every drop. I have come to you day and night, pleading with you to return to me over 100 years. I am merciful and long-suffering. It brings me no joy to judge you, but you have hardened your hearts, scoffed at my warnings through my prophets and my holy servants. I brought you from nothing." Now, let me just say something. I'd like to be able to tell you that America is turning Christian. I'd like to be able to tell you that the warning that me and other people have been bringing to America has been accepted. But just like one of the reasons I don't like to open comments is because all of the filth and all of the vile and all of the venom that comes in all of those comments. One of the reasons I hesitate to give my email, askstan@prophecyclub.com, is you would not believe the venom, the scratch marks that it leaves on my face and my soul with some of the people, some of the things that they say. If I were to read you some of the emails I get, you would probably cry. Because America is not receiving this warning. She doesn't like what I bring. She doesn't like what Dimitru and Henry Gruver and these other people, she doesn't receive what the Lord is saying. I understand, and I'm willing to take that. Paul was willing to not only be beaten, but also killed for the Lord, and I feel the same way. But you have hardened your hearts, scoffed at my warnings through my prophets and my holy servants. I brought you from nothing and exalted you, O America, higher than any other nation. But now you have fallen lower than Sodom. You have sinned greater than Egypt. You have become prouder than Babylon and Persia. You have become more selfish than Rome. You have exalted yourself in your own wisdom, higher than Greece. You have more idols, more places of idolatry and luxury than any Gentile kingdom in history. Your beginning was pure and great, but now the stench of your sin and filth fills my nostrils. I shall cut you in pieces, and you shall reap the harvest of wrath for what you have sown. You shall no longer be, quote, the queen of nations. Now you shall bear your shame, and become the lowest of the heathen nations, now as Agag. You shall be hacked in pieces, O earth, earth, earth. Hear the word of the Lord. Then to my horror, that massive sword came smashing down on Lady Liberty. Now, pause a second. I think it's interesting that we're seeing all of these statues being pulled down. Now, the other day, they pulled down George Washington's statue. You see, what they're doing is Babylon is fallen, is fallen. I believe that God is allowing this destruction to come because he can no longer stand the stench of our filth in his nostrils. He can't stand it. When it hit the top of her head, there was a blinding flash of light, and the sword split her in two, right down the middle. Then the sword came again and again against her. It divided her in pieces. As the sword would finish each strike, fires would burst forth. I heard terrible explosions. The vision of the statue ended with an earthquake, as it was hacked into pieces and sunk into the harbor. I was weeping and crying out to God for mercy. Never had I seen this side of God before. I had owned, by the way, Maurice Sklar is a pre-tribber. I love him. And again, I'm fine with pre-tribbers. I don't have a problem with pre-tribbers. The pre-tribbers have a problem with me because, see, the post-tribber, he's carrying the truth, and the other ones, it doesn't bother them. You know, it's sad for them that they don't have the truth yet, but it doesn't bother me. Him and his wife are good friends. I love them. Go to dinner with them anytime they're in the DFW area. Good people, good people. But he's a pre-tribber. Never had I seen this side of God before. I'd only really known the love and goodness of him. Never had I seen the wrath of the Almighty. Then, as I was watching from a zoomed-in close-up, the dream shifted and started to zoom outward from New York Harbor and started traveling in the air over America. What I saw was horror beyond anything I had ever seen. I saw the United States seem to crack in two with a giant earthquake right down the middle. I saw the southeastern United States covered with a giant wave of water from the ocean. I saw a massive earthquake that just seemed to crack off the coast of California. It reminded me of a saltine cracker that just cracked in two. The cities along the west coast, great as they were, just fell into the ocean. All the way from Mexico up into Alaska, and giant waves flooded inland until much of the west coast simply wasn't there. It had disappeared into the Pacific Ocean. Then I saw 3 giant rockets that took off into the air. 2 came out of the ocean waters, 1 came from the land and traveled a great distance. All of them blew up in the air, 1, 2, 3, in the upper atmosphere within 5 minutes of each other. It was in outer space. There were terrible nuclear explosions, but the last one was the biggest, and it created a huge mushroom cloud, which, by the way, this is in the book, God's Warning to America. Brand new book we just offered. You get all of this stuff. You get all of these things I read. They're all in the book. Midwest part of America, then the ground shook, and everything went black. There wasn't any electric light coming out of the homes. Then candles began to be lit and fires, and a little light was seen. There were other nuclear explosions, and many people perished throughout the nation. There was just twisted metal and charred debris in the cities that once were tall and majestic. There was then widespread looting and gangs roaming about everywhere with guns, stealing whatever food and supplies they could find. Then I saw what looked like elite riot police by the thousands go into the communities and the cities and force the people out of their homes, and brought them into what looked like concentration camps. Some, but not all of these police armies, had light blue helmets on. Hundreds of thousands of people were arrested in this way. Many would not cooperate and were simply shot and left dead on the spot. But there were millions of hidden groups that escaped the first wave of these terrible disasters. Then revival broke out, and great evangelists and prophets and apostles rose up and began to preach to thousands outdoors. And many were saved and born again. Miracles of provision, multiplication of food and water, and astonishing healings occurred. Millions of people cried out to God, and he heard and answered. I knew that this was not just happening in America, but the Great Tribulation was upon us. And all the world, all of these calamities were also taking place around the globe. I saw multitudes of tribulation saints refusing to renounce Jesus as Lord. They were starving, but many of them still refused to take the stamp on their bodies so that they could eat and live. There was what looked like kiosks that were in every little town. They advertised food and water, but only if you went inside and took the electronic mark. Some went in, bowed to the holographic movie image of the Antichrist, and were branded in their hands and foreheads with an electronic stamp-like tattoo. They came out. If they came out, they had this zombie look on them. Their minds and souls were gone. It looked like they had a spiritual lobotomy. Then, these people immediately joined the armies of those police units that were given weapons after they were fed and drank and rested in the kiosk. They were like robots doing the Antichrist's bidding. I knew that they were lost forever, but quite a few did not make it out. They were tortured mentally and physically inside the kiosk thing, but if they still refused the mark of the beast, there was a laser that shot through their brain and heart and sliced their heads off. Then they were immediately incinerated. Nothing but ashes remained. This was the most horrifying part of all. It made the Nazi death camps look like a picnic, if that's possible. Millions of people executed in this way via computer systems automatically with such precision and efficiency. I marveled that something like this was even possible and could even take place in such a large scale. The technology was far more advanced than anything I'd ever seen. Then I was back looking at the terrible angel, and he said, "Warn everyone, flee from the wrath to come. Repent and turn to Jesus while you still can. Pray that you may be able to escape these things that are shortly to happen and to stand in the presence of the Lord. These things are about to take place. Turn to God, cry out for mercy, come into the ark of salvation before the doors of grace close." Now, I do not believe that there's going to be a pre-trib rapture. As a matter of fact, I'm almost finished with my book, which I'm calling How Pre-Trib Won. How Pre-Trib Won. And then the subtitle is going to be The Lie That Beat the Truth and the People Would Have It So. So, no, there's not going to be a pre-trib rapture, suck anybody into the sky. No one is going anywhere. But I do believe this book is going to help a lot of people find the truth of the end-time events and their correct order. So it's going to be very, very important, and I'll let you know when it is all out. I do want to let you know that Tribulation Saints is at the printer. It is being printed, so probably 3-4 weeks we're going to be able to offer that one too. We'll talk about that at the right time. Right now, the most important thing for you to do is to get to the Sevenfold Miracle Crusades. I understand we still have a few places available in Crusade 2. Crusade 1, July 29 to August 2, I understand is full. Then August 2 to 6 is the second crusade. We're having to have 2 crusades back-to-back because of social distancing. Literally, one ends at noon on August 2, and another one starts that evening at 5, August 2, and then goes to August 6. Go to sevenfoldmiraclecrusades.com, get signed up, be sure and stay at the Hyatt, don't stay at another hotel, and also get the meal package. You're not going to have time to go out to restaurants and eat. This is going to be good food. You will like it. sevenfoldmiraclecrusades.com, sevenfoldmiraclecrusades.com. Next thing I want you to do is get the secret door to understand Bible prophecy. I was shown a secret door that links the feasts to the prophecies of Revelation so that you can finally understand the correct chronological order of the events in Revelation. That way, you can teach prophecy, and you'll know that you're teaching the truth. 1 for 25, for 30, 10 for 55. Next thing, get Miss the Mark. This is the book. I guess I'm getting far more compliments with Miss the Mark than I did Secret Door, and there was a lot of compliments for Secret Door. But people absolutely loving this book. It's a fast read, but if they read that book, they will never take the mark of the beast. It is the best way I know of to get people to not take the mark of the beast. I know they may not read it. They might not read any of these when you hand it to them, but go ahead and give them. Give it to them because it's going to sit there and the Holy Spirit's going to keep knocking on their heart, especially when the trouble hits. The Holy Spirit will bring it back to their heart. They'll open it, they'll read it, and they'll make sure they will not take that mark of the beast. Even if you give it to them, they don't do anything. Then one of these days you can come to them. You remember I tried to tell you, but no, I don't remember. Yeah, I gave you a book. You did? Yep, here it is. And then they'll read it. 1 for 20, don't do that. 10 for 30, 20 for 40 at prophecyclub.com. And finally, God's Warnings to America. All of these prophecies that I read on the air are actually all available in a book called God's Warnings to America. Over the last 32 years, I've collected the best of the 101 audible voices and angel visits and dreams and visions from people like Dimitru, Duduman, Michael Boldea, Leslie Johnson, Henry Gruver, Shane Warren, Terry Bennett, Maurice Sklar, Augusto Perez, Doug Metzger, Bree Keaton, and a lot more. And it's all available. 1 for 20, but again, don't do that. 5 for 30, 10 for 55. You want to get these into the hands of other people. This is your way of soul winning. Even if they don't listen, there'll be a time that they can come back and you can say, remember I tried to tell you about this, or they'll be coming up to you and saying, can you explain to me what's going on? And I said, well, I tried to tell you. I gave you the book. And then they'll start listening because you say, look, you did give me the book before this started happening, and then they'll listen to you. If you need precious metals, go to cornerstoneassetmetals.com. And if you need long-term storage food, go to heavensharvest.com and enter STAN as the promo code. I want you to come to the Sevenfold Miracle Crusade because I want to see you rise several levels higher with God. I want you to become a soul winner, prophecy teacher, and miracle worker in the tribulation, which is soon to arrive. Leslie and I will lay hands on you, anoint you with oil for you to receive a higher anointing in God as others have. Leslie will teach you her school of the prophets to help you develop more spiritually. I will teach you how to become a prophecy teacher, giving accurate interpretations of Bible prophecy. Go to sevenfoldmiraclecrusades.com and register before the room rate increases. And if you'll stay at the Hyatt and get the meal package, you'll help Prophecy Club organize the crusade. Sevenfoldmiraclecrusades.com. Crusade A from July 29 to August 2 is full, but we still have room August 2 to 6. Now, you're running out of time, so go to sevenfoldmiraclecrusades.com and get registered. As you know, I make many broadcasts referring to a list of dreams, visions, audible voices I believe are from God, given to Dimitru Duduman, Michael Boldea, Leslie Johnson, Henry Gruver, Shane Warren, Terry Bennett, Maurice Sklar, Augusto Perez, Doug Metzger, Bree Keaton, and more. Now you can have your very own copy. It's called God's Warnings to America. 1 for 20, 5 for 30, 10 for 55 at prophecyclub.com. God's Warnings to America at prophecyclub.com. In my new book, Miss the Mark, I expose the 9 deceptions the beast will use to deceive, if it were possible, even the very elect. Since Lucifer is only given 3.5 years to rule the world, but given 6,000 years to prepare for it, is it possible he has set up a 9-point plan so well thought out, so cunning, will deceive all whose name is not written in the book of life? What would you do if you had to tell a person the most important thing in the world, but you knew they wouldn't believe you? What would you do? Would you tell them? I believe you would. But what is the most important thing in the world to tell a person? The answer is, don't take the mark of the beast, because those taking the mark do not get soul death, but eternal torment in hell. But how do you tell them? Give them Miss the Mark. It is designed to be given to anyone, even if they've never heard of the Bible, Jesus, even if they're in another religion. It takes them from a blank page to making sure they will never take the mark. It's thin and easy to read. 1 for 20, but don't do that. Instead, we make them available in lots of 10. 10 for 25, 20 for 40, 40 for 60. That's 1 for 20, but don't do that. 10 for 25, 20 for 40, and 40 for 60 at prophecyclub.com. That's Miss the Mark. Don't take the mark of the beast, prophecyclub.com.